right, Nick, we are live on the pilot episode of Clear Waters, a podcast on clarity in an otherwise murky world. And Nick, I just want to thank you for joining us today, and let's just give the listeners a little bit of background on just kind of that whole idea and the purpose of you and I just wanting to jump on here every week or every couple of weeks.
Yeah. So I think we've been noodling this for a little while. Outside of us both having a nutty affinity to boats and wanting a name with water, referencing your podcast, Rising Tide.
There you go.
And my company, Pinchforth, named after pinching, a sailing term. And I think we're feeling this globally, that there's just way too much information and a lack of an easy way to interpret and distill it and use it to learn and grow and make good decisions. And with respect to business, it's costing companies a lot of time, progress, competitive edge, and ultimately revenue. So I think our goal is to use this, our little time, to share some relatable stories, some business, some not, to emphasize the value of clarity in your decision making.
I mean, I know you and I have talked off camera a little bit, just kind of as we're kind of trying to process the idea of this podcast and why it's necessary. But the thing that I really liked about some of the things you said, of why you wanted to do this was really just, it is such an economic issue, but it's also just an efficiency issue and a business process issue that says, how much is going out the back door, of a company at any given time, simply because people are not going through, say, a good decision-making process, or they don't have the right information available to make good decisions. And I'm just looking forward each week as we, kind of sit here for our 10 or 15 minutes of fame in the spotlight or whatever it is. And we have, our mothers are listening to it and maybe 2 or 3 other people. But beyond that, I want to have the whole idea that just says, how can people find that one thing to take away and really, as they build each week or 2 weeks, that what am I building? Am I building a process on how to make good decisions or how to gain clarity?
Yeah.
So what are we going to do this week? So you got in mind a story that you want to bring to the table, and then we get to kind of tear it apart and really dive down deep here, or jump out of the boat, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I think this will be a simple one, and this one's tailored for our mothers because they'll understand it. It won't be too business heavy. But yeah, no, so data, clarity, interpreting data, it's a big murky space. Let's make it specific and talk about one decision that everyone can relate to that would be much better made with clearer information. So here's a little story. My family, my parents and my brothers make fun of me for obsessing over the amount of air in the tires of my car.
That is a weird obsession. I gotta join with the family here.
No, I still do it too. I see the tire looks a little low. I actually have a little handheld electric one that I bring with me in my car. So if I ever need to top up, I can just do it. It's something wrong. But when I was in high school, my dad's car, ultimately my hand-me-down car, I'd always pay attention to the amount of air in the tire. So always obsessing over the tires, looking at the tires. And I was taking my car to get the oil changed, obviously obsessed over the tires, checked everything. They were all good, levels were happy, and tires looked fine. And I get to, everyone's kind of seen this before, I get to the mechanics. They take the car into the back, bring it up onto the lift. 5 minutes after they take the car, a guy walks in with a nail, and he's like, "Hey, you had a flat tire. You got a nail in your tire." And I'm like, I didn't have a flat tire. I checked levels before I drove here. I didn't drive over a construction site. I drove on the highway. There's no way I picked up a nail. You got a flat tire. He's like, "Well, you got a flat tire," and takes me into the back, and the rim is on the ground. There's no air in the tire. So I'm like, well, I guess I have to buy a new tire because that's destroyed. But I got to talk to your manager because I clearly did not have a nail when I left. Guy replaces the tire, comes back in 15 minutes later. "Your air filter is dirty." I'd personally replaced the air filter 2 weeks beforehand. Everyone's kind of seen that before. And I think it just really underscores what we're going to try to get at with this podcast. It's when something's behind the wall and someone's operating under the covers and not being transparent about what's going into whatever you're spending money on or deciding on, there's a whole lot of wiggle room that can dramatically change outcomes for you. For example, if I hadn't checked my air levels before I left, like I could have wound up just blindly paying $300-400 for that tire or that hole to be plugged. Same thing with the air filter. If I wasn't on top of it, you could be buying a new air filter every single time you go, just because you didn't know. And I think in business, especially today, with senior leaders getting information filtered and distilled and delivered in kind of a distant, detached format, there's a whole lot of risk at making decisions based on something that was swayed for someone's internal advantage.
So I've got a question for you. So let's just draw out the application of going to the place where you get your oil change in your car. So information is one thing, but being able to do something about it is quite another. So how do you kind of move it to the next level? I mean, so you knew you didn't have a nail in your tire when you walked in. You knew that the air filter had been replaced. Sometimes it just becomes like a tit for tat, my word versus your word versus whatever, but you're almost a little helpless in that situation. But if you're looking at just sheer, metrics, analytics, that, information that a company would have, they're not quite at the same disadvantage.
Yeah. I mean, they have a central source of truth, or many in most companies' cases. So having some sort of piped access there makes a difference. And I guess we're angling towards a piece of this show is sponsored by Dash. That's what we do, a data visualization tool for businesses. But I think the broader problem for any organization, finding a way to really tie into your information and understand it before a change or work is recommended to you is a pretty mission critical thing. Whether you're using our tool or one of the great tools out there like Looker, Quilk, Tableau, Power BI, there are phenomenal ways that senior leaders can get access to critical info. That way everyone's on the same page and you're making information on something and trust. You're never caught blind paying for an air filter that you just replaced a couple of weeks ago.
Right. I mean, as you have the tool that checks the air gauge or the air pressure in your tires or whatever, that's a tool in hand. Most people don't carry that tool. Most people kind of are just going and, hey, I'm seceding that authority or responsibility to the person at the oil change place or the person at the tire shop or whatever. The same thing in business. I mean, I think often people, they maybe have access to it, of the information that they need to, or maybe they don't have access to it, but they almost kind of cede the authority or abdicate the authority to someone else to maybe keep an eye on the levers and the meters that are running, to indicate. How do we get business leaders to really kind of move over go over the hill there and say, hey, I really do need to watch these more closely, and this could have a dramatically positive impact on my business? Yeah.
I mean, I think it's an accessibility thing, right? I think there's so much data out there. It's even like watching the news today. You sit down on your couch and you have no idea what's hitting you. Every source says something different. Everyone says that they have an inside source. Like it's impossible to tell what's real, what's not real. It's easier to just tune out and watch Netflix, which is what I do most of the time, because at least you don't have to make a decision there. Yeah. I think for execs, it's often that way. Like they want to get under the hood into their metrics, and someone whips out a Tableau dashboard and their eyes glaze over. Like small numbers, 5 bazillion different fancy charts. They look super exciting, but you walk away thinking, I don't want to look at that again. Like that confused me and hurt my brain and didn't really understand what it was. I think finding ways to make that information super simple and super easy to understand, is a pivotal difference. I think some of the companies in venture, you might have seen some startup decks. They do an unbelievable job of making complex market problems seem super simple and super easy. I think folks applying that philosophy to their data visualizations will really make a big difference.
That makes me kind of think of the Guy Kawasaki, presentation formula that he has. It's called 30-20-10. Are you familiar
Yeah.
with that at all? So
No.
if he said, if you're going to do a slide presentation, he said nothing less than 30-point type in the font, no longer than 20 minutes, and no more than 10 slides. He said, if you do not understand the complex problem and you can't explain it in 10 slides, then you do not understand it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, just, so it really, I mean, that kind of applied when you were talking about that. It's another thing that kind of struck me was the fact that just because it's simple does not mean it's not it doesn't mean it's ineffective, or
Yeah.
it's like lesser value. Sometimes it's higher value because it's something you will actually, put into application.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's piping in that common denominator too, right? Because a simple visualization is not going to give you everything, but it's going to give you a shared sense of understanding. So when you ask a question about your info, the person you're asking it of knows, all right, so you saw that. I'm seeing the layers beneath it. Here's how we communicate together. We see that gap a lot. We talk to analysts at Dash, and they, some of them tend to complain to us because they spend, 5 million hours answering the same question 5 different ways. And it's really just because the person who's asking them the question doesn't see the information that they see.
Right.
So like they're really asking another question, but there's no common denominator to use to kind of iterate on. To bring that down to earth, back to the car example, that's like if I delivered the car and said, I just checked the levels on all of my tires, take a look. And they came in and said, I know you just checked the levels, but it looks like this one's got a slow leak. Like, how do we solve it together? We're both approaching it from a shared perspective. I think businesses kind of need that. Today, it's more of I hope you're giving me the right information. And if you are, I hope the decision I make is the right one. So much larger or increased scope of risk in that situation.
I mean, have you found though, when you talk to people kind of in the C-suite, in the the kind of the corporate roles, that they can pretty well agree on what are the 5 most important things we need to measure? What are the 6 or 7 or 8 most important things we need to measure that have the highest impact on our bottom line? So, is that half the battle if you can get to that point?
I think a lot of them know. I see the level of sophistication or familiarity with their core data points is there. I think what they don't know is how they fluctuate on a real-time basis. So sometimes when we visualize these things and create a direct pipeline into this information, we get slaughtered with a whole list of new questions because now they can see in real time, and versus like monthly or weekly end like static data points, right? Like, oh, that's really what it does during the week. Why does it do that? Are we reporting a certain way? Or maybe we can solve problem X by introducing process Y. I think getting real-time access to these key things is really new, but generally speaking, execs know what they want to look for.
Right.
They're already asking for it.
And if that's the case, if they know what they need and you're providing them with what they need, then at the end of the day, then now the impetus is kind of on them to make good decisions. And it's kind of like, go back to your story a little bit and say, okay, what is kind of the one takeaway of what we've chatted about today that you're saying, okay, if you don't have anything else that you're going to take away from this 10 or 15 minute chat here, what's the one thing that you think would really move the needle for somebody that's listening to us today?
Yeah, I mean, the fastest way to create direct access to the underlying information that's informing your decisions, you should take. Because if you're making decisions on 2nd degree or 3rd degree information that's filtered by 2 or 3 different people, I mean, they're good people, but they have incentives just like you have incentives. And those incentives could completely change the decision you ultimately make. So, if you're approaching a big decision, or it's your job to make big decisions that like impact the course of your business, find a way to get simple access to the most important numbers to that decision in real time without needing someone else to go get it for you. Because that way you can know it's true. You can have that level of certainty. Your due diligence on your decisions are going to go a lot faster. And the decisions you make, you can really believe in and get behind.
I've got to believe too that it also if you're looking at the company as a whole, if I'm being led by somebody that I think is using, really good business decision making, a good business decision making process, I can follow that. I mean, if they can cast their vision, and I feel like that they're doing true due diligence with real-time information and making the best decisions that they can, I mean, I can't fault somebody for leading. I think that's leading well. I think that's leading with vision, that's leading with authority, that's leading with character and integrity. To really to really make this process as good as it possibly can. And it's a benefit to all. It's a benefit to the shareholders, it's a benefit to the employees, a benefit even to the partners and vendors that are kind of counting on that company to survive. But I love the story. So tell me how let's wrap up today. Tell me how the story ended. I mean, you're standing there talking to the guy holding the nail. So what happened?
Actually, so I'm remembering a price of a tire that was $400, but I actually think we just plugged that one. And I certainly didn't pay for another new air filter. So because I had access to the information, we saved a little bit of money. It came out okay.
Just imagine what you could do if you had information in any business that you run that really has a cost. For not having good information. Yeah. Nick, I love the story of you taking the car in, and I can just picture you standing there with the guy and going, "Well, it didn't have that when I came in, and the air filter seemed to be new when I bought it 2 weeks ago. So maybe there's an issue with it's premature aging, that we've got with the air filter, but." And I'm looking forward to doing this, and you bring so much to the table. It's just so fun to just kind of banter back and forth and just really kind of dive into these issues and hopefully really provide just like I said, a kind of a measurable process that we can kind of help people to set in place for their own businesses or even any decision making process, and really bringing clarity in a murky world. Nick, thanks again, man.
Yeah, thank you.